Welcome boys and girls, Costin here with a discussion about Total War 40,000 and why I am so certain that it is going to be the next Total War game, or rather the next fantasy Total War game. Whether or not it actually gets announced this December, that does remain to be seen. We know Creative Assembly is working on a fantasy game, we know they're working on a historical game, they have stated that publicly. Whether they announce both of them this December, that is obviously the question mark. Those kind of things always are subject to change, and will be interesting to find out what we're actually getting in December. But I would like to remind people exactly where you get the rumors, the discussion over Total War 40k. Because they have obviously existed for years, but then in 2024, in May of 2024, we got this post from Total War Center. Now, it's worth saying that Total War Center does have very strong ties to Creative Assembly and has had those ties for quite a few years. This is what was posted in May. So with Pharaoh, they stated the sales have been very disappointing despite already low expectations. They took a bet, and then it didn't work out. They scrapped the planned DLCs, which very clear that they did, and then they posted this. The map expansion will feature 4 new main factions: Mycenae, Troy, Assyria, and Babylonia, and several minor ones, including Elam and the Cimmerians. Worth saying, that is precisely what happened with Pharaoh. Though this post was made before CA decided that they were going to end support to Pharaoh, which happened after Dynasties came out. I believe the decision was made in August of 2024, if I got my timeline right. So yes, this did end up happening. And then you have Warhammer 3. The game is in stable condition and performed very well in pre-orders. And they did fail to meet CA's high expectations on DLC sales. It's in the middle phase, and it has around 1.5 years of development remaining. Keep in mind, things do change from May 2024 until the end of 2025, where we are right now. But this is what they were saying right now. Right then. The next lore pack will feature Cafe and Ogres, Monkey King versus Maneater, and the last DLC will focus on the end times in Nagash and Neferata. Now, I'm sure you will agree that obviously that didn't pan out, because instead we got Omens of Destruction. But here's a couple of things to mention. We know the Monkey King is going to come out at one point or another. That is very likely going to happen. It might even be the next big DLC. And obviously Maneater did come out, though he was already in the game file, so you don't necessarily gain points for that. But it is also worth stating that Creative Assembly themselves, before Legends leak, all that kind of stuff, Creative Assembly themselves had stated that they would do a Cafe and DLC. And then Legends leak happened, and then people really showed how they felt about the idea of doing a Cafe and DLC after Thrones of Decay. Like, you had Shadows of Change, then you have Thrones of Decay. People didn't want CA to go from Shadows of Change, which had Cafe, to Thrones of Decay, to going into Cafe again. They wanted different stuff. It's not that people are against Cafe DLC, it's more just the timeline of everything, especially if you're fans of other races. Then there's the leak surrounding World War I, and yes, it was basically cancelled. That's what many rumors and leaks do suggest. And then the fourth part, Warhammer 40k. The development for 40k progresses without serious obstacles. The game was originally planned for 2025, but plans are subject to change. However, it is not the flagship for the fantasy genre of Total War and serves more as a testing ground for the final and really ambitious project for CA. And this is where you get into Star Wars, which is the studio's big flagship and has the potential to attract a huge audience. However, it is still far from release. So what this post says and what other people have stated is that yes, there is a Star Wars Total War game that's going to be made, or they're hoping to make it, but then it's not going to come out for years. Like, if it comes out before 2030, it would be very, very surprising. And then you have Free Kingdoms 2 being cancelled. They attempted to recover the momentum and relaunch a newer and less expensive version of the game under Jack Lusted, which, by the way, Jack Lusted is very important because he was part of the Total War Center, and he is now still, I think, part of CA. He certainly was at the time. And the project was terminated yesteryear. So they did cancel Free Kingdoms 2, which, not surprising. We know they did. They didn't quite say that outright, but they did abandon Free Kingdoms 2. So that is what we can expect from Total War going forward. We can expect more DLCs. Now, again, things are subject to change. Obviously, the Ogre Cafe DLC didn't pan out, to put it lightly, of course. Though, I always said that back then, in 2024, long before Omens of Destruction came out, long before we even knew exactly what it was going to contain, I said this. People can have different opinions on leaks, but depend on how long it's going to take them, you can figure out if C8's plans changed. I wonder how they changed with Tides of Torment, really. Because, like, with Omens of Destruction, my perspective was the reason it took so long is because they originally did want to make that Cafe DLC with Maneater. And then the Cafe part didn't pan out. And so they then decided to focus on Greenskins and Corn. That was probably a decision. Or they could have done Ogres, Corn, and Monkey King and then decided, yeah, we're not going to do Cafe right now. So that's how you get Greenskins. Could be an idea. Though, makes you wonder what exactly did happen with Tides of Torment. Some people speculate that maybe, obviously, they wanted to do Sunish and Norska, and then it's like, well, we need to do a popular race, because then people aren't going to buy them. So that's when they decided to do High Elves, because High Elves were the last race announced. Maybe that's the reason for the delays. I have no idea, to be honest with you. That's just pure speculation. Could just be other issues. Could be that 7.0 is going to be an amazing patch because it's trying to tackle a lot of different issues, and that's the reason for the delay. I guess we'll find out. Depends on the state of 7.0. If it is tackling a lot of issues like auto-resolve, for instance, then you know that they've done a lot of things not specifically related to just the DLC. But if it's just the Lord Pack without inherent fixes, then maybe their plans on which races and characters they were going to do changed over this year. You never know, right? Now, as for my own personal perspective, I think a 40k Total War game is the most logical outcome based on where the market is, what would work for Creative Assembly from a sales perspective, from a business perspective. They could do something else, undeniably so, but imagine if they announced Age of Sigmar Total War. Sure, they would get some sales, but nowhere near as much as they would with a 40k Total War game. And that's something they recognized even before 2023, because if they release a 40k Total War game next year, it has been in development long before Hyenas was cancelled. But it goes further than that. See, whenever I talk with people about my job, the first thing they ask is like, oh, what's your subscriber number? This number doesn't mean as much as you might think. It's a nice ego boost to say, oh, you got tens of thousands of subscribers, or for other people, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of subscribers, but it's actually not really that relevant. The most amount of relevance it has is with regards to sponsor deals and so on and so forth. I wouldn't know because I've never done sponsor deals, but other people have told me it does count for that. But yeah, this number is just an ego boost. It is important to know where your subscribers are coming from, where you might get a boost in some numbers. So if I look over here in this month when the controversy really picked up with Warhammer 3 and the AI issue, and I did videos on that, yes, I did gain a subscriber boost, but it's more of a representation of something rather than actually being useful. You will not ever succeed on YouTube by counting how many subscribers you're gaining. It can tell you if you're doing well or poorly, but that's about it. What really matters is in this page, the YouTube channel analytics, the view analytics, not the shorts. Shorts can gain you a lot of views, but not necessarily that useful directly for revenue, because the revenue of shorts is pretty low. I'm not going to show the revenue tab, but over here on this page, I spend a lot of time in analytics on YouTube. Every single day, I actually spend more time in analytics than I do making videos, because it is important. You have views, impressions, CTR, average view duration, and this is why you get frustrated as a content creator when people accuse you of clickbait, because you can get people to click on a video, but the actual number that's most important here is this one, the average view duration. If you're getting people to watch your videos and then they're clicking off, that is not a good outcome for your channel. Now, given the average length of my videos, I'm doing pretty okay considering everything. Could always be higher, but then you have other things to consider. Audience retention throughout the video, when are people clicking off, how long are they watching, returning viewers, because the reason we have this difference between views and impressions and CTR is because, yeah, not everyone that clicks is going to watch the whole thing in a single go. They'll come back, they'll watch a bit, come back, watch more, but CTR, how it's scored versus views, is different versus impressions. But then you get where people find your videos, etc. There's a lot of analysis and also pattern recognition that you need to do as a content creator. It applies in many other areas of life, really. I learned this by actually following geopolitics for as long as I've actually done YouTube. Like roughly the same time that I started doing YouTube, I started following geopolitics very closely. So that's the reason for me. It's just pattern recognition, OSINT, so open source intelligence, all that kind of stuff. Once you figure out what clicks with people and why it clicks with people, you realize what kind of content you need to do. For instance, I would really like to do more videos on Total War Pharaoh Dynasties, or I did when it came out, and then it's like, yeah, people are not going to watch that. They're not interested in watching that, which is honestly a shame from my perspective. There's a lot of content I would like to do, let's plays, various smaller games, various different games, but you can't. But based on that mentality, I think 40k Total War is the most logical outcome for Creative Assembly at the moment. I could be wrong. I could be misreading everything. I would, however, also point out the final fact here. 40k Total War is the only fantasy Total War game we've actually heard any kind of credible leak or rumor about. The only one for a fantasy game. We've heard about various options for historical, so Medieval 3, Empire 2, but we've only heard about 40k as a Total War fantasy game. We haven't heard anything about Game of Thrones, or Witcher, or Lord of the Rings, or Warhammer 4, or Age of Sigmar. Whatsoever. There is no credible leak on any of those other subjects. So just through process of elimination, what else could it be? Now you might say, well, we didn't hear anything about greenskins and corn with Omens of Destruction. And yes, that is part of it. Though you could also argue, and I would argue, that they wanted to do all the mono gods, right? So they did Shadows of Change Siege. They did Nurgle with Thrones of Decay. Them doing Khorne and then Slaanesh is very logical as an outcome. It was logical back then as well. Greenskins kind of are the weird one there, but that's the thing. You can't figure out everything. Like, I couldn't tell you which factions they're actually going to have in a 40k game, or where they're going to set it in, what kind of period. I suspect it will involve Primaris Marines just because of Games Workshop, but that's roughly it. Would be interesting if they chose something different, like, I don't know, Total War, Warhammer 40,000, the War on Armageddon. It would be awesome, like Yarrick, Imperial Guard, many Space Marine chapters on a planet, in a sector, Gazgul, and, you know, Eldar just doing Eldar things. And that's assuming, of course, it is true what Valrak said about the starting factions being Space Marines, Orcs, Eldar, and Imperial Guard. We'll find out about all of that. Christine, signing out.